Tina? Okay. So good morning, everyone. Today is Friday, June 12th, 2020. The time is 9 a.m. We are continuing our budget deliberations. This is, in fact, a special meeting, and it is fiscal year 21 budget deliberations. Calling this meeting to order, attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Fillios. Also joining us by conference, Captain Kim
Edmondson.
Yeah, right. Captain Kim Edmondson. Sorry, Kim.
Edmondson.
Kim Riley, Captain Deke, and Carlene Behringer. And okay, so do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do. I'd like to add an item that is time sensitive. It would be an action item for outside counsel and a sub item under 74206(1)B if needed.
So potential executive session.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that? I don't think we do we? Do we need a formal motion to add exec? We can go into exec at any time.
Barry, I think we need the formal motion for the action
motion?
item.
We do to enter, but
Yeah.
do we need it to change, to add it to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I move that we add a second item to our agenda, which would be outside counsel for the prosecutor's office, along with a subsection for executive.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And did you want to take this up at the conclusion? Or did you? Okay. Fair enough. Okay, then. So without any...
Ask everybody to mute their phone, please.
Everybody who's on the line, can you mute until you're ready to speak? And I know somebody else joined us after we started. Who's that?
Tom Freeman.
Tom Freeman.
Hey, hi, Tom. And I'm sorry, who was else?
Captain Smart.
Hi, Captain Smart.
So Tom Freeman from Veteran Services and
Yeah.
Captain Smart,
Yes.
KCSO.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, Dina, your show, go.
Thank you, Commissioners. Welcome to our third deliberation meeting. This meeting originally was set up to look at capital items, and that'll be the major focus of today's meeting. However, we do have some housekeeping items that have to do with personnel. So I'm going to hand off to the sheriff. He has something to present to you, and I will put it up on the board.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Commissioners. We'd like to address matrix funding. And we at the Sheriff's Office believe that failing to fund the matrix would be very detrimental to our staffing. It's a promise that was made, and I realize the whole COVID thing is a problem. But we've taken a really hard look at our own in-house openings. And we have two scenarios with Dina's help over the last 24 or so hours. Come up with two scenarios that would fund potentially fund all the matrix movement for the entire agency for the next fiscal year. As you can see in scenario one, it would be the elimination of a license examiner for driver's license, the freezing of two clerks in the jail, the freezing of an operator in control room, and the freezing of a maintenance assistant, and that maintenance assistant is a janitor. It's a fancy title for a janitor. All those freezings would be for 1 year, which would give us a total resources loaded of $210,542. The other scenario is the license examiner, the two clerks in the jail, and then we have been told but have not seen the paperwork yet of a pending retirement of a sergeant in the jail. We have a sergeant currently assigned from the jail into background, so we pull that sergeant back into the jail floor to replace that sergeant that's retiring and give us a potential savings of about $238,000 and change. The calculations that for funding the matrix were about $185,000. So that we've got two options here. You know, it's coming off our back. You know, we're taking our own skin here to do this, and it doesn't affect the general fund. And these are existing positions; these are not new money. So this is something that's already currently in our budget. You can see on the display here, some of those have been open for an extended period of time. We do have a hard time filling jail clerks positions. It's hard to find somebody to work in that environment. And the license examiner has been empty since a recent retirement. So, Commissioners, I don't expect to have an answer from you today, but I want to be able to present this. this is something that's very important to our staff, and we think this will help us retain people as we go through this next fiscal year.
Do you have a particular preference on these two?
Yeah, I do. And because we believe the pending retirement will occur next month, I would take scenario 2 if I had my druthers. But if that doesn't occur for whatever reason, I mean, like I said, we still haven't got the report from the sergeant, then I'd certainly go with scenario 1.
When you say, I'm sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
Oh, I just was going to ask, so this includes all your non-sworn personnel as well? Movement for them?
No, it does not. It's just the
Sworn.
people in the matrix.
When you say preference scenario 2, you're saying that's the one you would prefer to give up?
Yes, I would prefer to give that one up. I would prefer to use that scenario if necessary.
Okay, okay.
It impacts less people, less positions.
Any thoughts, Leslie, Bill?
Well, I'm still concerned about the revenue going down. You know, the numbers that we saw, a lot of the sheriff's revenue numbers are still going down. And frankly, I don't know how we can entertain it without addressing the non-sworn employees countywide, so.
If I may respond, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
You know, as I said the other day, if I don't have people to work in the jail, deputies in the jail, and deputies on the street, we're in a world of hurt. And, you know, this is what that impacts. Also, the ECOs, the emergency communication officers, the 911 people. And I've said to previous boards, I never had to say to this one, but the phone rings 5 times at the assessor's office. It rings 5 times. It rings 5 times at 911. Somebody might die. And so I can't afford to lose those kind of people because we're not staying competitive and staying with our matrix.
I guess I just have a problem believing that your sworn deputies would leave because of 1 year that we're unable to fund it, when we're all in this together and we all, you know, are looking at our community. So I guess I have more faith and hope in your sworn that they're not going to take off because of 1 year.
You know, if it was 1 time, 1 year, I think you're right. But this is an ongoing, repeating. It's kind of like the movie Groundhog's Day. We get a jump, and then nothing happens. And we get a jump.
There's always an excuse.
There's always an excuse, and this year it's COVID. But, you know, every time, and it's been happening for years that way. And then we get way behind, and we do all these studies, and HR does all these studies, and then we get a big bump, and everybody's happy with the promise that we're going to move forward the next year, and we're going to continue to move forward, and it doesn't happen. And there's always a reason why.
And how many
people are
times, how many times has it not been funded, the Matrix, since 2007?
I think 3.
So in 13 years, it's been 3 times.
3 times. 3 times that promise has been broken. And that doesn't include the lack of cost of living adjustments. When the rest of the county got cost of living adjustments, the matrices were not moved. You know, I mean, it's an ongoing issue. Like I said, if it was a one-time thing, yeah, I think they'd stick it out. But it's a pattern. And it doesn't matter who's sitting in your chair. It's been a pattern amongst the board.
So 3 years out of 13 years, and that's a pattern?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Bill, any final thoughts?
No, I would accept and vote for the sheriff's scenario 2.
And if it helps, we should know probably within the next 2 weeks about the sergeant's retirement.
Help them retire.
Okay. Yeah, I think to your earlier point, Sheriff, I'm not prepared to make a decision today. I do have some thoughts. I thank you for the consideration. I think to Leslie's point, any decision that I would make, I would factor in what happens to the rest of the employees, and in general, what's the impact to the taxpayers. We're headed towards 0. If 0 can be achieved, and it's going to have to be achieved, at least from a tax standpoint, if we want to sign up for the potential property tax relief that the state's proposing, then I think there may be some merit here. But it has to maintain the 0, and it has to do something for the rank and file, if you will, the rest of the employee base.
Well, if the numbers are accurate, 185, it still seems a little bit high, but, and we get 238. That's $53,000 that goes back into the general fund.
Okay.
I do realize that's not a ton of money. in the big picture.
Yeah, but it's something.
But it's something.
So we'll need to look at it. We'll need to have a better handle on the revenue. July 17th is my understanding is the deadline for the specifics, I think, on the property tax relief. Is that correct, Dina?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Sheriff Wolfinger? Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So Dina, back to you.
All right. So, since we're on the subject of personnel, let's just bring up our personnel summary, just for fun. We have some other departments here that are represented on this list. So is there anyone, I'm open to the audience, was there anyone in the audience that wanted to speak to any of these positions before we go on to capital?
Dina, I just got one question for the board. Maybe I misunderstood something earlier.
Yeah, come right up, Dan.
Thank you. Unless I'm mistaking something, I thought that there was some discussion, or at least there was talk the other day about 1.8% COLA. Is that gone now? To your point, Leslie, we're not disregarding everybody else. We make that approach with the assumption that you guys talked about a 1.8% COLA raise for the entire county on the last hearing. Am I wrong?
Oh, we left that in, didn't we?
It's right here.
The 1.8's in there, isn't
That's
it?
for everyone.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
there.
but
So,
for
to your
me,
point, Leslie, we are playing with everybody. We're not disregarding the rest of the county. We're just trying to make sure that the matrix stays. The rest of the county is supposed to get 1.8%.
so are you saying that the matrix would be funded, but they wouldn't get the 1.8% COLA?
No, not at all. We're not asking you for any money to fund the matrix. We're taking that out of our hide. The 1.8% that we talked about earlier this week, that's predicated, or our whole plan is predicated on that. So just want to be clear in front of the board and everybody else, we're not overlooking everybody else. We're just taking care of the matrix out of our own dollars.
My issue is people are out of work, they've lost their business, and our county employees are getting
I
raises.
understand that, but apples to apples, you guys talked about 1.8% the other day, and I just don't want that to be disregarded. Thank you.
Yeah, it's still in there. Is that correct, Dina?
It's right there.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dina.
Excuse me.
Bill, go ahead. Anyone else?
Marissa from.
Yeah, Marissa, come right up.
Hi, Marissa from District Court. I just wanted to verify or clarify, I couldn't remember if the flow clerk, if we were cutting it out entirely for next year, or if it was funded at a later time, or I just couldn't remember exactly.
It was cut on the 8th.
Was it cut? Just double check.
Right, so you have the help desk coordinator and 3 judicial assistants.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Personnel?
Okay. Let's move on.
Good morning, everybody. It's Carlene. I just wanted to renew our request again for the Deputy Trial Court Administrator for Kootenai County and explain why I love Kootenai County. I do have obligations to the other 4 counties, and that position would be quite helpful. Again, we are, I know everybody's struggling, and there are people out of work and things of that nature that have really impacted us, and we are more than happy to wait a couple months to have that person begin their employment.
Carlene, do you have a job description? Because we don't actually know how much this person's going to cost without a job description.
I submitted the job descriptions and all the financial information when I submitted the budget to the commissioners.
Yeah, Michelle?
I believe it was in the budget.
That was an attachment.
Okay.
Okay.
If not, I can certainly send it to you.
But it hasn't gone through HR?
No.
Oh,
Not that
okay.
I'm
Not
aware
yet.
of anyway.
Carlene, can you,
It has not, okay. So it would need to be scored, I guess, is where I'm,
Carlene, can you handle a delayed hire?
yeah, that's what we already,
Yes, I can.
Okay.
yeah.
And what are we showing, Dina? When?
50,802, that's starting in April, basically half a year.
Half year. Okay, got it. All right.
So all of the positions that are in gold here are funded partially.
Understood.
Didn't she get rid of the admin assistant? I think, Carlene, but I thought in the last meeting that she gave up the admin assistant thinking the TCA would cover both positions. Because I think, wasn't the
For Jay,
Take the mic.
Sturgill.
Yeah, grab the
Yeah.
mic, Michelle.
Yeah. So Carlene, the question has come up, if the TCA gets funded, is that, you're taking away that half-time position for Jay? I don't know, she got
Carlene,
disconnected.
did, you there?
There she
Apparently
is.
not.
Carlene?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we were trying to remember if your TCA was funded, if you were taking away that half-time position?
Did speak with Janet Meserve, who's in charge of Elderly Court Services, and Jay Sturgill, and I tried to work something out where the administrative assistant would be able to dedicate some hours to help them with their telephone calls and setting up all their classes and things of that nature. Janet indicated that she would need that person at least 20 to 25 hours, and I can't commit to that. So I would still like the board to consider the part-time person to help Jay Sturgill and the rest of the court assistance team. It requires a lot of telephone work, and I just don't feel comfortable committing the administrative assistant for the TCA's office to that function at this point. I don't know how we could fit that in.
Okay.
All right, we need to move on. Okay, so where are we here? We're
Okay,
funding it at 50%?
We're funding the TCA at 50%, and we're funding the administrative assistant as a part-time.
Okay, I'm putting an end to personnel. Let's move on. Capital.
Okay. All right, back to the preliminary summary, just a quick peek. You're at 3 million. That's the number to beat, and if you notice, your capital number is slightly larger than that. Which means that even if you fund part of your capital, you could balance the budget today. Today is potential to balance the budget. So my hope is, my personal hope is, that we can balance the budget today and then cancel out our meetings until Alliant, and then start digging in and looking at things, and then we can do some ad hoc meetings.
So when would we take on the B budget?
We
'Cause even
have-
if-
We have
go ahead.
scheduled that for Monday.
Go ahead.
But if you wanted more time for analysis, we could move that to another time if you want.
I'd rather have a day or two.
And I'm going to ask our analyst, would you like more time in case we need your services?
Yes.
Okay,
We always need her service.
fair. You're crucial. How do you like that?
Yes,
Okay, fair enough.
absolutely essential.
Okay, good deal.
All right, so on to capital. So do we want to do the, okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to put this up, Michelle put this together just to kind of put you in the mood. So, all right. So do you want to talk through this?
Yeah, and I think everyone has a copy in front of them as well. But as we're working through this, I just wanted to remind everyone of, one, the county mission, and that needs, I think, to be kept in mind as we're working through these asks. And so I've went back to the county commission, or the county mission, and pulled out some of the key items that were reflected in there, as well as looking at other items, including the impact on the future impact on operating budget, the impact to the community, department performance, useful life of that item, and strategic goals and priorities, as well as future plans.
So. And did you have a copy of that?
Yes, I gave
Yeah,
everyone a
you
copy.
each have a copy of that. Okay, so let's go to our capital list. Okay, so this is our current capital list, which is also represented up on the board at the far right, FY 2021 CapEx. So as you can see already, we've cut quite a few things. The things that are highlighted in green, you have funded with restricted funds. And then I have solid waste kind of highlighted by itself because it's self-funded.
Okay,
I put some little M's in here for mandated. As you can see, Elections has literally busted a move, and we'll get all of this funded through grants this year. So hats off to elections for getting in there and getting with our grants team and making that happen. So a few things.
Can we address all the sheriff's information first? Because that way we don't have, you know, literally thousands of dollars going through
Absolutely.
everybody else's asks.
So the sheriff's asks are in this panel here. Everything that's green is already funded or committed. So you basically have these unhighlighted items to consider. The largest of which are radios. Then next would be professional standards work release remodel. And then the jail recording and cameras, I believe.
So grants in the room, I see James. Okay, I guess we can deal with that one first because I'm actually going to ask that that be moved to 450,000 and taken out of fund balance because we also have JJC stuff that has to be done as well. And if we do it all together, it'll save money. And my understanding is it's not going to be 450,000, but until we, you know, get bids and quotes and all that. So
Okay,
that would be my
this would be
suggestion.
funded with assigned fund balance, and are we in agreement? Okay,
When you say assigned fund balance, whose?
Not restricted, assigned. So when we
Okay.
went through our exercise and we broke up that $13 million.
So it's part of the 13 mil?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so 450,
Okay?
that
Yeah.
we set aside that.
Okay, go ahead.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, and that's something that we can't do without. We have to have cameras at JJC and cameras in the jail. So that's just not a,
okay, so the
Dina, for
JJC
everybody's benefit, because we have some folks that are not normal attendees, if you
Yeah.
will, please explain restricted for people versus assigned.
Okay, so there are several flavors of fund balance. Our unassigned fund balance is our 2-month expense cushion that we keep on hand. Our unassigned fund balance is above and beyond that. That's free cash flow, our savings account that we tuck away and set aside for particular projects. Traditionally, because we're in a good cash position, we fund a lot of our capital each year, those one-time expenses, with the assigned fund balance. So anything that we say we're going to pay with assigned fund balance would reduce our savings account by that amount, and then there would be no levy funds used for that.
And it grows once.
It grows.
I mean, that's important.
If departments gain efficiencies, if there's money saved, if they're doing more with less, or if we get grant funds that pay for things that maybe we budgeted for that now we don't have to pay for, that balance grows. But judicious use of that assigned fund balance without overly relying on it gives us a nice cushion and gives us some capital for future planning.
And how much is the cushion?
The cushion for our cash flow is 2 months' worth of operations and
In
personnel.
other words, about what, 8 million?
What is it?
13.
13, I
13.
believe. About 13 million.
13 million?
Yeah, and it's in our quarterly report.
Okay, okay. I just
So
wanted to,
folks can go online and look at our quarterly report, and there's a specific page dedicated to all the fund balances and all their classifications. And you can see that unassigned fund balance and the assigned fund balance.
So it's basically 2 months of operating expenses.
Right, and that's separate and apart. The assigned fund balance is over and above that.
if we had no revenues for 2 months.
Right, exactly.
So I also want to bring up the fact that our COVID team, I think that some of this might apply there too, because we've.
Possibly.
Yeah, so I want to keep that in mind. So it may not
Okay.
come out of fund balance, it may come out of COVID money.
Okay.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
So are there any other things on here that you would like to fund with assigned fund balance?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this and I just.
Hey, Shawn, come on up, please.
So Mike, everybody wants to hear you.
I'll sit. So in looking at this and talking to the sheriff, for some reason, and I don't know why or how it happened, but the evidence remodel vehicle processing center, the old MCC building is not up there as a request. Unless I missed it. I didn't see it.
It's in Fund 11.
Yeah,
There it is.
yep.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to make sure it was in there because I was just looking under sheriff and I didn't see it, so if it's in Fund 11, then we're fine. Okay,
Is it here? Vehicle processing pole barn. There it is.
Is that it?
There she
that's
blows.
the right number.
Okay,
Because we're gonna take the remaining funds that are already,
Set aside,
that were already saved from the first project.
Correct.
And then match it up with that to get to the 101,000.
yeah,
right. So,
Yep.
so only the above and beyond amount is sitting in here.
right.
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 Okay. Is this something that you want to fund with assigned fund balance?
So I would say, at this point, yes, but realizing that we have some facilities things coming forward, and so we may not end up using this. But I would say keep it in now until we have a definite path forward.
Okay, so do you want to place assigned fund balance against that to fund
Yes.
it now?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think there was already a line item that had that amount in
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, finish.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I'm ready to go to the
Okay,
next
so,
thing.
so there are some other
So Dina,
sheriff items here.
what were you thinking, I'm cutting to the chase here. What were you thinking in terms of using assigned fund balance or unassigned fund balance, whichever, to essentially come to a near balance today? What are
So-
your thoughts?
Well, again, traditionally, the board would go through, decide which items meet the mission for the year, and then those would be, assigned fund balance would be allocated to cover those items, and then everything else would be cut.
And then what happens when we get through all of our final numbers is some of this assigned fund balance might be funded with tax, property tax. But it's just too early right now to be able
tell.
to tell.
So of the 3 million or so deficit that we're currently at, what piece of that is capital?
3.2.
Oh, so it is 3.2, so we're still way off.
Well, yeah, and if you were to fund everything with fund balance, you would have a surplus.
So essentially, the entire deficit is capital
Yes.
at this point.
At this point.
At this point. That's why I'm saying today, you can balance. You need to decide what you're keeping and what you're funding with fund balance, and we're pretty much done. And then it's just a matter of going in and looking at details to try to claw back, say, assigned fund balance use, or look at a COLA or other options in the budget to tweak it.
Okay. So given some of the plans that we're currently working on in terms of facilities, I guess back to your earlier point, Leslie, are there any other items that, let's go. Let's do
Okay,
it.
so
Go.
back to the sheriff's section.
Okay.
So the 121 work release model, I don't think we're ready to go forward with that because we got a new sheriff coming on board. And I think with the facilities plans, I think things are too much up in the air right now. So that would be my say,
Fine.
that not this year.
Do
Okay.
it. I think we're going to be able to address that
Yeah.
with some of the plans that we're working on.
Right. GPS mapping and the jail classification software. I'm not necessarily saying that we have to have jail classification software. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts. That has to happen. And then I just hope that, obviously, they'll make sure that that's what we really need, that particular. I'm saying you need a car. I don't know what kind of car it is, okay?
Okay.
That's just kind of where I'm going with that. So I would say that could be fund balance as well.
Okay?
Okay?
It's not that big anyway. Okay, next one. That, I guess we're going to have to keep.
Yeah, and as far as the GPS mapping thing, I mean, I don't, I listened to the spiel and all that. I don't necessarily have a problem with it unless there's, some kind of grant or something that maybe would apply to that. I think it's a useful tool. I'm just not sure how often it's used. Is there a captain that can speak to that?
Captain Edmondson is here.
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Hello. Hey, this is an item that we do need. We could use it quite regularly on a variety of different scenes and not only just as an investigative function, but this is something that we've had in the past. It's equipment that is broken, and we're trying to replace it. I haven't, in the grants I've been reviewing, I haven't seen a grant that would cover something like this, and so it's not a very significant amount. I would ask that we could keep this amount and find the funding somewhere to purchase it so that we could have an efficient tool that's, current technology, so that we're not out there with, measuring sticks and tapes and stuff.
Sure, I'm fine.
Yeah, that's minimal anyway.
So
Leave
do
it.
you want me
Okay.
to make a notation about perhaps trimming the budget to fund it rather than assign fund balance?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Radios?
I think we funded half of the ask last year.
So you want to do the other half? Or one half?
Yeah, I mean, I guess here's what I would say. I would say fund half with assigned fund balance, and if we get to a point where we have some tax revenue available for,
And then fund the balance?
yeah, then fund the balance with,
I would ask if the sheriff wanted to comment
Yeah,
on
he's coming.
Yeah, please.
the replacement plan, because there's a rotation plan.
These are replacements. Because we funded half last year, we were a little bit behind in our replacement plan. We can't even get parts for these anymore. So when they go down, they're not even repairable. The manufacturer, Motorola, won't repair them. They're basically obsolete. Now, we do have some that still work, and they can be used by another agency, but they're not as reliable, obviously. And for our guys in the field, reliability on communication is paramount, obviously. The upgrade, by the way, the upgrade that comes with new portables. By the way, the new portables are cheaper than they have been in the past. So they have been about $7,000 a piece, and they're about $6,700. I'm not sure how that ever happened, but the price went down. But these actually have a GPS locator on them, so if the officer is non-responsive, we can find at least the radio. And since it's attached to his hip, we hope we'll be able to find the depth. It's a good officer safety upgrade with less money than we've spent in the past on portables.
So you want to go 50% fund balance, 50% revenue, tax revenue?
I was going to
Thank
say
you.
too,
Sure.
Michelle reminded me, there are some other radio asks up above, and I believe that the quote was put together as one, and I think that's why there was the discount, because there was multiple radios being,
I think the radios up above aren't that expensive, though.
so you want to
So,
fund
I
this in
don't-
half?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's do that.
but make a note that that's kind of on the primary.
When do you get your best handle, Dina, on revenue?
Well, I will defer to the treasurer. I think he was saying he wanted to wait as long as possible, so probably middle July, we're gonna know with investments, but keep in mind, I mean, that might be $500,000.
Yep.
I mean, it's, in the big scheme of things, it'll help, but it's not gonna be huge.
So we're still at a deficit of about 3 mil.
So let's do this. Okay, so we've reduced by about 200,000. Because these are all linked,
Yeah, no,
everything
I
works.
just want to let her finish.
Okay, you're at 2.8.
I'm sorry, Sheriff, go ahead.
I just wanted to explain, I heard Commissioner Duncan talk about the radios above not as expensive. And that is probably accurate. I don't know how many juvenile detention ponds are replacing. But you have to understand there's a difference in radios.
Sure.
You know, even though ours have multiple frequencies and have to be able to hit the seminary trunking system off of repeater sites and have much greater range. Juvenile detentions within the facility or even short transports.
I think my comment just was the fact that they weren't all lumped in together for the discount necessarily.
Yeah, okay. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure you understood.
No, I
There's a
understand.
difference in the-
Absolutely,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, as soon as we can get through the sheriffs, we got a few good projects that will knock a whole bunch of.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. I mean,
Yeah.
we need some big line items here if we're
Yeah.
still out by 2.8.
Right, but I just want to get the sheriff freed up so they can
Okay,
move
go ahead.
on with their day.
Okay. so this one's going to be funded through cuts on Monday. These two will add, let's see. I hate doing this on the fly, but I want to give you guys a running total. Just lost it. No, I meant to go to preliminaries. Great, okay. Now I turn my, hello. Technical difficulties.
All right, let me see if I can just do
Go ahead.
this manually here.
Here you go. So that's our current deficit.
Yes, but I want to subtract out these two.
Oh, okay.
And that's when everything went sideways.
So it's already marked with assigned fund, or not assigned, restricted fund balance for the marine pole barn. But with these facilities that we're looking at, that too may, we may not need to fund that. But it's in restricted funds anyway, so we can leave it until we know
Already
more.
been subtracted out by
Yep.
restricted funds.
Yeah.
Okay, so funding these two items with assigned fund balance, you're down to 2,700.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so go back.
So I think that's everything for the sheriffs.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. Were there any other comments before we wrap up?
No, not at this point.
Okay. All right, if we just want to start at the top then. We're still looking at grants for that 8,000, and Tom can speak to the fact that he's gotten some donations there too. It's such a minimal amount, I'm fine with just
Yeah.
putting it as assigned fund balance or maybe B budget, if we find dollars in B budget, not his B budget, because
It's
that's
minimal.
small, but
Okay, I'm
yeah.
just gonna say assigned
Assigned.
fund balance
Okay, that's
there.
fine.
Okay,
Okay.
What's with the vehicles? I think Kim Riley spoke to this.
Yeah, I'm probably not ready to fund those just yet. I'm still hoping, which now the sheriff just left, that with the 25 vehicles coming online, that there's going to be a few more trickle downs that, that can fund that. So,
our fixed asset accountant is here. Who's also on the fleet management team, but from conversations that I've had, the sheriff's vehicles usually don't trickle down to the non-sheriff departments, they usually stay within the sheriff departments. So these two vehicles are basically what's for the non-sheriff group to start phasing out older, worn-out vehicles. So the idea was, 2 vehicles a year, and then just keep phasing
Okay.
those out.
so if it's going to be 2 vehicles a year, let's see if we can get that with tax dollars instead of fund
Yeah,
balance.
let's take it out.
Okay, so you want to cut those, or you just want to leave it?
We can leave it, but if,
Not fund it?
but not fund it.
Okay. So it would be funded with, basically what we're funding is we're taking savings account to reduce the fund balance, or reduce the deficit. So,
Yeah.
all right, I'll leave that one there. Okay, this one, the community development software, we spoke with the COVID team, and it's not eligible
Right.
for COVID dollars.
Right.
So.
That's just a fund balance thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
so-
gonna have to leave it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're good with using assigned fund balance for that?
Yes. Yeah. It's overdue, actually.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And then I'm saying, I did a little bit more research into the next 3 items, and I'm comfortable with funding all 3 of those through, actually 4, sorry, all 4 of those. So that's going to knock our deficit down quite a bit, all 4 of those with fund balance. And this was assigned, I think we had $1 million in IT set aside. And so this is going to be way less than that for this year.
Okay.
Okay, so we're in agreement?
Yeah,
Sign
yep.
fund balance?
Okay.
So I'm just gonna mark these so that we can do our quick math when we get down to the bottom.
Okay. Jail sliders have to. We've got to fund those.
They're failing.
Yeah. So, yeah, assigned fund balance. You know, this ramp cover, I suppose if we end up having, you know, some of the tax funds, but I'm not ready to fund it out of fund balance yet.
Where is that, Shawn? Is that the court building?
No.
No, it's in the sheriff's admin building, and it's on would be the northeast corner. Basically, it's a rather long ramp that accesses, pardon me, gives handicapped access to the briefing room and evidence remodel. So it's not a real high-traffic area. You could put it off. I mean, the biggest part of it is really difficult to clear the snow. That's probably the most difficult part of it. You could put it off, and if you had to make an accessible adjustment because somebody needed it, you could use the upstairs for that, at least for another year.
So can we take it out?
That would be my thought. If you asked me which one would be, and I know Greg would probably agree with me, jail sliders or ADA ramp cover, I'll take the jail sliders because of the safety issue for the detention deputies. It's not a high-traffic area.
Can we have Greg speak to it?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. We are gonna get some more bids on that, so that number's probably gonna come way down.
Okay. All right.
So you wanna cut it for now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bill? Okay.
And then we won't know about those. We have to fund those with fund balance right now for a 5-year plan. And we've got 5-year plan money set aside in the assigned fund balance.
For these 2?
Yeah,
Are we in
sorry.
agreement for those?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
Okay, so we're down to this, and, yeah, so the radios have to be out of assigned fund balance as well. They're actually looking at trying to get a grant for it, because this is only half of what they actually need. They're trying to get a grant for the other half. But these are end-of-life critical, and, you know, they're not out on the street, but they are throughout the building, and they've got to have communication constantly. So it's just a safety issue for juvenile detention.
You're on the vehicle processing. Old Barn.
She was, but I'm talking
You're on-
about the
you're on the next
51,000. Yeah. Yep.
See what?
And we're
Yep.
in agreement on that one?
Yeah, go ahead. How much are we hitting assigned fund balance for as we go along here?
Well,
She'll have a
I'll have
number.
a total for you here in a little bit.
Okay, that's okay. I don't mean to.
No, you're good. Okay, so this one is for the airport. We added this late. We could use restricted fund balance for it.
Take it out. The
Okay.
way we're headed, I don't think it's going to happen. Leslie?
I agree.
Bill?
I agree.
All right, out.
And I also, Bill and I both spoke to Stephen about this. And so
He might not be happy, but.
we removed the use of the fund balance because we spoke about his future planning, and that's something we're gonna be doing as more of a long-term 5-10-year
Yep.
comprehensive plan. He has some plans for that fund balance for some really big projects, so we.
Right, and that's why that went from 2.8 million to like 3 million or something, because
It's a
our deficit.
Was he going to,
relatively small match.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
It's a relatively small match.
Right. Was he
lot of-
expecting any
Yep.
FAA funding for the design? Do you know?
So my understanding is we're talking 2 different things. We're talking snow removal building, which I don't know if there is a match or it's a very little match, but the admin part of it would all be on our money. would all be on general fund tax
Okay,
dollars.
okay.
Shawn might be able
Go
to
ahead,
speak to
Shawn.
that.
Right, so the FAA is not going to give you any money for the building, for the administration building. But when it comes to the MBs that I showed you the other day, there's a very small match on that.
You mean the maintenance buildings?
Yes, and they will provide the machinery and the building to house the machinery. And that was confirmed when I talked to Ryan from Spokane International Airport. So anything that you spend on the admin side, you'll not get back. Now, Jody did say that that's a possibility in a different way, but
Right.
my understanding is the FAA will not pay for the building.
Understood.
Right.
Okay, out.
Thank you.
Quick math here.
So as far as the assigned fund balance that we're talking about, that's when we went in earlier this year, and we actually said, okay, we want to set money aside for this, for this, for this. So while I understand that we can't, I mean, it's a concern, we don't want to use all of our savings, but this is what the savings is for. And we have been able to return and replace every year. So I just want to make that
Yeah,
that
this year
clear.
might be a bit of a challenge, but although I suspect the revenue is going to be a little bit higher than anticipated, but that's just my guess.
Sure.
People are paying their taxes so far. Come December, we might have a different situation, but.
Well, come December, they should have that rebate.
Well, that's
that
true, too.
credit, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping.
Right, but the credit's for '21, so we won't see it until later.
No, it's this year. It's
When
this
would they
year.
see the credit?
On their December bill. So their December, they're
The
paying
December
for,
bill, they're paying up until
for
June.
2020.
Yeah, June of 2020. Right, it's always 6 months in arrears.
It's a year in arrears. So December is for 2020. They're
Yes,
paying
yes.
for that, right, the
Right.
whole thing. But they just have 2 payments that they can pay it on,
Okay.
so.
Except in,
right, you're
okay, that's
down.
all right, I think we're saying the same thing. Go ahead.
You're down to 1.2
All right.
with those cuts.
1.2 deficit? Okay. All right.
Yep, so everything in pink. So far, you've used 1.2 of fund balance, which is pretty low. Some years, we've used up to 10 million.
Okay.
So the reason why I asked the question is, I think when we did the fund balance meeting, there was still money set aside for the admin engineering, there was some money for a roamer. Is that right, Dina?
I think so.
So if you're not doing that this year, then there was some money already there, so you're not taking the full amount out of fund balance. Does that make sense? Because there was already something pegged somewhere else that you're not going to use this year anyway.
Right, but we had, ample funds for the stuff that we're funding.
Yes.
So have we gone through every,
Okay, so what's left? We just have a couple of things.
okay,
So Fairgrounds Master Plan, right now, we have their usual transmittal, 80,000. This was in addition for a master plan. And then these 2 items are the non-restricted funds portion for these equipment. So there's these 3, and then there's, assessor has some vehicles that they're funding with restricted. This has already been cut. I think that's it.
So we're
Just
down to
the
1,
wire
2.
here.
Okay, so you were going to calculate where we are with the assigned? What did we take out?
1.2.
1.2.
And so
So that takes us down to,
1.2 is
no,
what we have,
yeah,
have
that's the
left.
reduction, but,
and that's what we have
Our
left.
deficit right now is 1.2.
half.
I'm sorry, the deficit is 1.2. What did we actually deduct?
1.2.
1.2.
Yeah. So it's one and the same.
Yeah, no, it's not one and the same, it's double.
It was 2.4. We went 1.2.
Yeah.
and now
Which
that's-
left 1.2.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, never mind.
There you go.
Go ahead.
There you go. I think we're good. I'm fine with leaving the 40,000 in for the fairgrounds right now. And then the other ones, they're covered by, so actually noxious weeds, well, both of them. So the 25,000 is covered by levies. They're
Yes.
noxious weeds and their parks levy.
Yes.
So I'm fine with leaving those
Okay.
in there.
Anybody else? You guys okay with those?
Yeah, leave it.
All right. So, all right. I think that's it.
So then the question arises, do we fund the deficit from fund balance?
No, I mean, you can't do that because you don't know what's ongoing expenses. I mean, we've just gone through capital, so,
Right, but the deficit is entirely capital, is it not, at this point?
not anymore.
Not any-
So here's where I rub my unicorn necklace.
Go ahead.
And I give you an option. So, right now, there are some positions here that have not been filled and have not been actively recruited. So I sent out the list of all the open positions since our last meeting. The ones in gray, folks have come back and said, yeah, I'm in the process of hiring right now. And I didn't hear back from the prosecutor, so I don't know about this one. I didn't hear back about snow groomers. Nick did say that this particular one, that we could freeze that. But if we were to freeze some of these positions, potentially, like down here, we have 2 bailiffs, we have 2 new bailiff positions that are being asked for. We have an open bailiff position that's been open for almost 100 days.
Yeah.
That would contribute to your bottom line. What I'm saying is if we took all of these positions right now, you'd have $301,000 to work with if we froze those positions for the full year. So depending upon, how much.
So how many bailiff positions would you freeze?
There's this one,
That's one,
and then there's an ask for 2 new ones in personnel besides.
and those are still in.
Yeah, so I think Sylvia has something to add.
So Pete did contact
Pick up a mic.
Yeah, come on.
please,
Yeah,
or
sorry.
something.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, either way.
Pete did get a hold of HR last week, and he's attempting to hire a bailiff and a screener. So I'm not sure if those are one and the same of the one that was on that list for 99 days.
Okay,
Okay.
this is
So
the
we'll just
only
have to
one
verify
that
that.
exists. This is the only bailiff that exists right now.
Then
There
he's,
are 2 potential, but they're not created yet.
so he's,
He is hiring for that.
for it, yes.
Yeah, so if anything, I would say go forward with one new and then make the other one April, or maybe just give him one new and see if he can keep all these filled. And then if he still needs to be, depending on what court does, and Barry can speak to that, then we may just have to come back mid-year and get it for him. Because bailiffs is one of those things that if you don't have enough, things come to a halt. I mean, you have to have them.
And Pete did hold off with the COVID time because their workload was slowed down
Yeah.
because of it. But he's gearing up for everything that's going to be opening up.
So that's why it stayed open for so long. Gotcha, okay. That
Okay,
makes
so what
sense.
are we taking it out?
We're keeping it.
Keeping
And-
it.
but-
Now, we're keeping it plus the other 2?
Well, that's where
That's up to you. Do you want to keep 2 new? Do you want to have 1 new? Do you?
Barry, are you speaking to that? Or,
The legal secretary position was
Oh.
filled.
okay,
Okay.
And I think that was, there was a little bit of confusion because there were 2 positions. I think,
Okay.
Originally, but that was one of the ones that we
Yeah.
talked about just recently about the delay because of COVID.
Right.
But that
Okay.
was, I think, filled as
okay,
Okay. It just hasn't been put in the system yet. So it's
Right.
Popping up. Okay.
What did we do with county assistants?
We funded the county assistance manager is still an
going.
open position. So
Aren't we merging that with elections?
we did.
Yep.
We did, but that open position is still sitting in the budget, so.
Connie Berenger.
And that, I believe, comes out of
Go ahead, Jen.
County assistance funding, right, for those positions. Jennifer, for the record, come out of Fund 40, right?
Right, it comes out of Fund 40, but if we cut it from the budget in total, then it would reduce the budget.
Right, and then I'm pretty sure that the snow groomer one too will go away, but let's just verify those and then we can cut those too.
Why wouldn't
Because
we
they're both
cut-
organic.
Why wouldn't we cut the county assistant manager right now? We've already merged those positions, no?
Right, but we would be reducing the revenue in county assistance, and it would offset, and there would be a net zero effect on
Okay,
your
okay.
deficit. Same thing with snow groomer, it
Snow
sounds
groomers,
like.
okay.
Right,
But
actually, you're
these-
right, Dina, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, we were looking at open positions, but, you know, there isn't a whole lot there.
So are the sheriff's suggestions already taken out of there?
Yes.
Okay, so they're already gone from there.
No,
Oh.
they're,
No, no, no.
they're
They're
pending.
not out, yeah.
They're pending. Some of those positions, they have people in backgrounds, and they would choose to forego those positions to fund their matrix steps.
Gotcha.
So you have not incorporated any of the two scenarios that sheriff suggests? Okay,
No.
I didn't
No,
think so.
because the expense side of it also isn't in there.
Okay,
So we'll just leave that as is for
okay,
now.
fair enough.
So, I mean, we can shut this down. All it's going to do is reduce the amount of county assistance. I mean, it's a net wash.
Right,
Okay.
for both of those positions, so.
Right. So if you want to shut those positions down, we can, just for housekeeping purposes.
I would.
This one, Nick definitely said he can give up.
For 2021, but we don't know about 2022 yet.
Right.
So, yes.
And
Yeah,
then
that's what I'm
this one is not actively being hired right now. This is part of county assistance as well.
Restricted to, but yes.
Oh,
See with the Medicaid expansion.
okay.
So, I
Hi,
mean,
it's Carly Berenger.
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Carlene.
received the text that you- I received a text, you had a conversation about the bailiff.
Yes,
So we understand
Are those
there's,
positions still- I'm sorry.
well,
Go ahead.
what the conversation was is we saw an open position, but he's actively hiring, yeah, recruiting and hiring for that one right
Correct.
now. So we were just looking at potentially, having one bailiff start in April. But I don't know that we came to that conclusion.
And that we requested 2 bailiffs, so would the other bailiff start in October, or are you just considering 1 bailiff and then cutting the other?
I was thinking one in October, one in April.
Okay. Thank you.
so 2 instead of 3, is that right?
No, just forget the one he's
okay.
hiring for
He's
that one
already
right
hiring
now.
that?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So we're just talking about the 2 new ones.
Okay.
So one beginning of the fiscal year and the other one halfway through?
yes.
And then if they just find out that they can't make that work, then they just have to come forward and let us know.
Okay.
All right. All right, so we would take out that. Sorry to be jumping around so much.
Well, and it's not crucial that we balance it today, but as close as we can get. Okay.
All right, so you're just right around 1.2. Other things we could do,
But this, when we talked about freezing those positions and that 3-tiered approach and all that stuff, that was before you heard from everybody. But of course, everybody always says, we want to do this. So we could go back to just freezing positions.
could do a hiring freeze, but there are a lot of positions that are in process of being hired.
Sure.
But for those that are not in process,
The new ones, that's your,
what?
things that haven't been created yet, there you know that there's nobody being hired.
Right, but see, then once again, that takes me back to the overtime issue. If these people are being hired, then the overtime is going to go down.
It should.
So that's where I have a problem with funding all open positions and funding the maximum.
Well, that's the
Overtime.
feedback that I received from the group.
Sure, sure. Jennifer, did
I
you?
was gonna say, a couple years ago, I know we looked at funding some of those open positions at like 70%. We didn't fund them fully. That was an approach, remember that a couple years ago? I don't know if
Right.
that's something to look at too. Where you know you're not hiring them probably for the full amount of time, but just a suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, we could go back and calculate funding them for half the year, quarter of the year.
How many positions are we talking about, Dina?
We're talking about quite a few positions, but the feedback that I've received is a lot of these are in process.
As in background or
Right, and.
in the hiring?
And two, I mean, the data is only as good as what's in the system. If things are in motion and they haven't been updated in the system, then this isn't necessarily as accurate as it should be. And two, just to add from a position standpoint, we get changes every payroll.
Right.
I haven't run through our payday from yesterday. I haven't run any changes through for that particular payroll, and that's gonna change our existing number. We just received a report from workers' comp, and our rates are gonna change a little bit, so there's gonna be an impact there. We're hoping it's not large, but it could be as high as $100,000. So things are in motion with personnel. But if you choose to say do a hiring freeze, then, you know, we can back out part of
Those
of
that are
these
in
open
process.
positions. We
Right.
can back out part of that, but just keep in mind, if you do that, then next year, you're
Yes.
compounding the problem.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it's something to consider. I can go back, I can run all the changes through again and give you some numbers for the open positions with commentary from the departments and kind of put that all together in a package for you to review. But it sounds like if they're not actively being hired or if they're being advertised and you want to do a hiring freeze, then that would be something where you would have to probably put out a communication and say, okay, we're not hiring anyone for X amount of time.
Well, yeah, and if we're going to consider increases, even if it's just COLA, whatever it is, we can't have it both ways. So if there are going to be increases, I think it's almost going to necessitate a hiring freeze. Can't have it both ways. But yeah, if you can run those numbers, that would be helpful.
Sure.
I do have one other thing. I brought it up before, and I need to provide both Leslie and Bill, and I guess some folks with additional information. And that has to do with the study on Coeur d'Alene Lake by the National Academy of Sciences. There's some haggling going on right now between the state and EPA as to who's going to pay for this. And I think, and the governor's acknowledged, in fact, it was his idea that an independent third party perform the analysis, the conclusions of which would dictate what action, if any, needs to be taken. And so what I would like to propose, and I've got to give Bill and Leslie the background because I didn't bring it with me, is that study by the National Academy of Sciences is supposed to cost about $755,000. What I am proposing is that we fund a portion of it, or offer to fund a portion of it, about $200,000 from fund balance, with the provision that, number one, it get totally funded with the other two parties by a certain point in time, and number two, and by the way, this is kind of built in, when the conclusions come forward, they get implemented. So that would be my suggestion, because once again, it's really all about the lake. In the final analysis, that's what.
So if the conclusions come forward and it says that nobody else is allowed to build on the lake and that we have to go from a 25-foot buffer zone to a 200-foot buffer zone, and we need to rip out every single sewer or septic system to go to sewer. I'm just saying, when you make these hardline things with not knowing what the outcome is gonna be, that's where I can't get on board.
Well, then fine, we don't have to indicate that.
Okay.
We can just simply make the provision that says that the other two parties agree to fund it by a certain point in time. How's that? And stay away from the last item.
Sure, well, we gotta balance the budget first, and then I can wrap my head around that, so.
Thoughts, Bill?
I have problems with just agreeing carte blanche to whatever.
It's not carte blanche.
Well, it sounds like whatever they
no.
decide, we gotta do.
No. Leslie's saying she doesn't want to do that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't wanna do that either.
Well, fine, then we don't have to do that.
Okay.
We simply say that the other two have to agree to fund it.
Okay.
So if we agree to 200,000, they have to come up with the 555.
I would favor that.
Okay.
I can give you another 73,000.
Go ahead.
If you want to just say, for these retirements, that you want the departments to absorb those. That's what we've done in the past. I've already increased our sick leave termination for the VEBA part of it, but normally the departments are able to absorb these. This is the first year that we've actually put forth retirements as a budgeted item, so I could back this out if you want.
I'm probably not ready for that. If it gets down to the wire, then we
Okay.
can look at that again. but-
Wait on it.
But you do have close to 1 million of new positions here.
Right.
So, we're right around there. If you funded a few more capital things with fund balance, I mean, we could pretty much get there. I mean, you're pretty much there. I can clean this up and send it to you with like a shorter, less colorful, easier to read kind of summary. I mean, this is kind of our working
I don't know, it
documents.
kind of
They're
matches mine.
They're kind of
Like it all-
ugly.
kind of pretty
and
colors
they're
on
just,
mine.
There's kind of a lot going on, and doing things on the fly. I hate to say numbers on the record because
Sure.
we're just kind of back of the napkin right now.
Sure.
So is there anything else in here that you really feel like you want to cut, that you want to fund? It looks like we're pretty close. I mean, personnel is really where that's where your
Right.
big money is.
Yeah.
And, we have a meeting set for Monday for the B budget. I don't know how much we'll find in the B budget.
Right, but I think Nancy wanted more time. I think we
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
gonna.
she wants more
So
time.
not meet Monday on B budget, so.
Okay, so you'd like
push
to
that off.
cancel Monday?
Yes.
Do we want to just have a conversation via email to decide a more appropriate date?
Yeah.
And just
That's
say
fine.
that
That's fine.
our next hard budget meeting will be with Alliant in mid-July?
Well,
Yeah, we'll need to meet before that.
yeah, we'll need to meet before then, so.
Right.
Maybe we'll just address it next week and figure out where we're at with our new numbers, where we're at with,
Okay.
We have
the
enough time.
B budget,
All right.
look, so, B budget analysis, that's what I'm saying.
Anything else you would like to look at? Any questions you have?
I think I'm fine for now.
Okay. Michelle, did you want to talk about capital planning right now? Okay.
So I do want to add a couple things. When you go through and like IT has this much coming out of fund balance, can we just see that? Because assigned, we said 1 million, but obviously it's not that. So I'd like to just kind of see, like the one line item for the cameras, that's going to be wiped out. So I kind of want to see that on the assigned fund balance sheet.
Okay, I can pull up the assigned fund balance summary that was part of your resolution and just tick off those items so that you have a visual.
Sure, sure. And what I'm thinking for facilities is, we put 5 million in the 2020 budget to address a new building.
Yes.
I'm saying take that 5 million and just roll it forward to address facility stuff in the future,
For fiscal '21.
for fiscal '21, yeah.
Okay, so you want to add a budget line item?
Well, I understand that we can just roll projects forward. Do you want to do
We can roll
that?
it forward. It won't be part of this budget. It would be part of the amended budget
Okay,
after
so,
this budget is adopted, because that money is sitting in this year's budget now.
Correct.
Okay.
which is cleaner?
It's cleaner to just leave it and know that it's there.
Okay.
And then we would roll it forward as part of our capital roll forward summary, and that
Okay.
would amend your budget.
Okay, then I'm fine with that.
Okay. Do you want to wrap it up so we can move on to Barry's? Sure. Okay,
All right.
fair enough? Okay.
Does anybody have anything?
Yeah, I was going to leave public comment to the end, but you know what? Let me take it up now. Public comment, dealing specifically with the budget? Hearing none? Okay, moving on
Okay.
to the amended budget, excuse
No.
me, the amended agenda.
Yes, there we go.
Dealing with outside counsel. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Barry McHugh for the record. Commissioners, thank you for taking this up on a short-term notice.
Barry, hold on.
Hold on one
Let's get
second.
everybody out of here.
Yeah, it's,
President of
Off the
NWPOA.
phone.
Hey, who else is on the line? Who's remaining? Anybody else?
okay. Well, not yet. We may not need an executive
We
session.
might not need the exec.
Right. But thanks, Barry.
Okay, go right ahead, Barry.
Thank you. Just for, I guess, to make the record,
And we're still on TV, by the way.
okay. I have an investigator in my office, and the board is well aware, a position that is a Kootenai County employee funded by way of an MOU through the Attorney General's office, who works exclusively, well, I shouldn't say exclusively, but pretty much
Primarily.
exclusively on ICAC matters. It's a entity that is funded through the Attorney General's office, is supervised primarily through the Attorney General's office, and he operates throughout the state, primarily in the, the 5 northern counties. He was involved in a shooting 2 days ago, and the reason for not getting it on the agenda was it wasn't until yesterday we started talking about what's going to happen next. Like we have here in First District, the Second District has a critical incident task force that is involved in those kinds of things where officers are involved in the use of any form of violence in the exercise of their responsibilities. We have an outside agency who conducts an investigation, basically to look at, separate and apart from if there's, in this case, of course, there wasn't a survivor, but if there was a survivor, are there criminal charges that are going to be prosecuted by the county where it occurred? But there's also a separate investigation regarding the officer's conduct to make sure that that gets a thorough review. It's that officer conduct investigation that I'm here to speak about this morning. That also has the possibility of criminal charges. And so it's not an internal sort of employee liability evaluation so much as it is a way to evaluate the conduct of the officers and whether any criminal conduct occurred. It's an important part of the process, and I'm here this morning to ask for the board to authorize outside counsel for my investigator. Great employee, don't have really the greatest amount of trust in his abilities and his judgment.
That's fine.
And it's just a situation where he feels like he needs to have his own attorney to talk to make sure he's making good decisions, to make sure that the interview takes place in an appropriate setting and in an appropriate manner. And I think it's something that, in this circumstance, I believe that is appropriate.
And this is something that you can check with iCrimp as well to see if they provide this.
We have.
Okay.
I have inquiries in with the Attorney General's office, but I think the MOU is pretty clear that it's a Kootenai County employee, so I'm not really.
And for the benefit, excuse me, of the people listening in, this employee, the need for outside counsel is to avoid conflict because this employee does report to you.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Just so that everybody understands that, okay.
And we do have an inquiry into ICRIP to see, what their position might be on assisting with the payment. So any authorization the board gives me would be contingent on ICRIP coming back and saying, this is why we can't provide counsel in this context. So I'd be happy to answer questions. It's an unusual situation where you have to go look at the MOU, so it's a little bit...
Do you anticipate this taking some time?
I don't. The interview itself will take some time. I would expect at least a couple hours, but it's primarily going to be sitting down and talking with counsel, make sure the attorneys are well aware of the circumstances, and obviously consultation, and then sitting in with the actual interview. And based on what I know right now, I would be very surprised that it went beyond that.
Who actually conducts the investigation? Is it ISP?
In this circumstance, Lewiston Police Department is taking the lead in the investigation. I know that other agencies will be involved, but just like we do up here, depending on the size of the agency, there may be two or three agencies that get involved if they need personnel, if it's a complicated case.
So in the case of a motion, would we need to cap the term of the contract employment? Do you see it going beyond 3 months? You don't.
I would be fine with that, and like I indicated, I think, earlier in an email, I would ask that the board cap it at $5,000, and it turns out that more is needed for some unusual circumstance, I would come back to the board. But that's always going to be in the I think in the context of, was it within the scope and appropriateness of the job. And if it gets very complicated, I think it goes without saying that you're getting into a situation where, was it within the scope? And I just don't see that happening.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So I move that we approve the hiring of outside counsel in the situation described by our prosecutor, not to exceed $5,000.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion is carried.
And just to be clear, my understanding, or in case it wasn't, is that I would just pay that out of my existing B budget. I think I
That's
have
fine.
money there to cut away from, travel and things that aren't
Cool.
happening right
Sure.
now. So anyway, just wanted to make
Okay.
sure I'm
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Once again, I'll call for public comment. Hearing none, 10:17, meeting adjourned.